Hey, it's Tiffany. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I'm feeling this pull away from social media and towards real connection. And that's exactly why I started my newsletter. It's a place for us to connect authentically without having to jump through algorithms. I usually share a little bit about what's going on in my life, my family, practical tips for 2 career homes, and just generally things that are inspiring me. I'd love for you to join me so we can create this little online space and we can lean into all of the ands in our lives together. You can sign up at the link in our show notes. Enjoy this episode. I'm a small town kid born with a big city spirit. I choose to play a lot of awesome roles in life: mom, wife, entrepreneur, CEO, board member, investor, and mentor. 17 years ago, I founded a marketing consultancy, and ever since, my husband JR and I have been building our careers and our family on the exact same timeline. Yep, that means 4 kids, 3 businesses, 2 careers, all building towards one life we love. When I discovered that I could purposefully embrace all of these ands in my life, it unlocked my world. And I want that for you too. I'm Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident.
This week we have a conversation with Jeb Banner. Jeb and I have been adjacent in the Indianapolis business community for years, but have actually been in the same room very few times. The characteristics of Jeb, for me, that are the most discerning are that he's such an independent thinker. He is so intentional, and he strikes me as one of those people that doesn't do what he doesn't want to do very often. He's really good at finding what he loves and staying close to that. He posted recently on LinkedIn that he had just gotten back from a sabbatical. And this has been a topic that's been a bit of a mystery to me. Breaks have only looked like maternity leave for me. And so I wanted to understand, how did he do his sabbatical? What is the purpose? And why would or wouldn't I think about taking one? Listen into our conversation.
Well, thanks for coming in, Jeb.
Of course.
It's been a very long time since we've been in the same location.
That's true.
And I have been keeping track of your journey on LinkedIn a little bit, seeing your starting new things, leaving old projects. I knew you when you started SmallBox, a web agency, which probably feels like a couple lifetimes ago to you. So maybe just leapfrog real quickly what you've been doing. And then I'd love to just hear from your words, in those professional pursuits, what have you kind of found is your superpower as you've looked across your career and the things that you've been a part of?
Yeah. So SmallBox, we met, I think we did some development work early on for Element 3. Gosh,
for sure.
I was always itching to do something on the product side. When I was at SmallBox, we built about a dozen different tools that were kind of products, both our own content management system, but different solutions that never got over the threshold to the product. They were always tools. And it was frustrating to me because I felt a little stuck in the agency world, which gets to my superpower question a little bit. And so I spent a lot of time and money going down a lot of rabbit holes that didn't pay off. But eventually we found one that did, and that was Boardable. So that was about 2016. And it was because we had a partner with United Way who was a client. And they said, hey, can you build us something? And we spec'd it out, and we mutually realized it needed to be a product, not a tool. And fortunately, at that point, I'd done a couple of nonprofits and been a board chair. And so I knew the pain points of running a board without having, purpose-built tools. What I call digital duct tape was how most boards are run, which is Google Calendar, spreadsheets, doodle polls, et cetera. So really, that was the jumping off point for Boardable. And that was a game changer for me because finally we had a product where the alchemy was all there. We had the right customer zero, which is super important in building a product. We had the right team, the right people around the problem, and we had the right timing in the market in terms of what was available and what we were looking to do. And then we also were in a friendly funding environment during that time. And so very quickly that business took off. And then by the end of 2017, it was sucking me in to the point where I had to leave and go full time. And willingly and gladly, I was pretty burned out after 12 years of running the agency. And the agency had suffered a lot at SmallBox under my leadership because I wasn't engaged. I was doing the bare minimum. And so we'd lost a lot of talent, which was fine. It needed to happen. But it got to the point where it was sort of like, do we keep doing this or not? When my energy has shifted so much to Boardable over the year and a half or so before I left, my wife came in, Jenny, and she really just kind of turned that business around and got it back up on its feet as a CEO. I spent 2 years in that role. decided it wasn't for her. And then we handed it off to Meg Liffick, who runs it now, is doing a fantastic job and has kept it small, kept it under 10 people. And that's been a good formula for that business.
And you're still an owner today, is that
Yep,
right?
I'm still an owner. I'm kind of like the board of directors, an advisor, a little bit of a consultant. And I love working with that team. It's a great team and they're doing great work. It's an honor to be involved with it. I'm just not in the day-to-day at this point.
So I think it's really courageous for you to say I was doing the bare minimum. I know I asked you a different question and we'll get to that one, but I want to stop on that for a sec. In that season of life, would you have been able to say that in that way?
Yeah, to some degree, I was aware of that. And I was checking out pretty actively, and my heart wasn't in it. And you know how that is. If your heart's not in something, everything suffers. As a leadership is critical. I was moderately conscious of it. I had started meditating in 2016, right around all this started. And so my overall awareness of my talk track and stories was increasing. And I was able to have a little more objectivity, though it was still the beginning days for that. So I was coming into consciousness around some of that and coming into consciousness in general around my behaviors and thinking. But I would say with perspective, it's become a lot clearer to me that I was burned out. I was not in my zone of genius. I was doing things that were not fun and enjoyable. And I needed to be in a different position doing something different.
I think one of the sometimes wrong stereotypes is that if you're an owner, CEO, president, founder, you must love it always.
Yeah.
And I have found I'm almost 20 years into Element 3, and at different stages in my life, my growth, my family's life, you have to go through a process of recommitting to what it is today and what you are today. And I don't think that's broadcast enough.
Yeah.
Because it can feel very unsettling when you're going through it.
Totally. And how much do you share that journey with your team? And what part of your team do you share it with? It can be very lonely. I think, yeah, for me, I really thought I had to kind of sacrifice myself for a long time for the business. And yet I wasn't preaching that to my employees. I was telling them like, hey, if you're not happy in your work, let's figure it out. Let's change this. If you need to go start your own business, I'll support you doing that. I was doing all those things, but I myself was thrashing about. And I struggled with that a lot because I felt guilty for not being excited about the business. I felt resentment, a lot of that. I felt stuck. And now the word I've really come to understand is I felt claustrophobic. I felt like the walls were closing in. I didn't have room to move and breathe. And I'm more of a wide open space kind of guy. And that also, I'm not really a structure process guy. I'm about building those things. I'm not about living in those things. And that gets back to where I feel like I have genius is I'm very good at building. I have this vision now of where I thrive. It's an open piece of land and I come in, I put the roads in, I put in the utilities, I put in the houses, I get everything up and running, the governance. I'm the first mayor. And I love that phase of a business. But there's a point where the business needs a different leader. And with SmallBox and then with Boardable, I came to those points. I came to it faster with Boardable because I'd had the experience of SmallBox and the company grew more quickly and it needed a different leader. And that was a less traumatic change because of my experience at SmallBox and also, which we could talk about, having a board of directors that was engaged and supportive of me and my own journey and said, hey, we're here for you, was super helpful because I didn't feel threatened to go run and hide when I was feeling that way.
Has it gotten easier for you to be clear with yourself and those around you about what it is that you do want out of life?
For sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey? Because I think that's when you say, like, I was really in service to the people. I was in service to the business. I was in service to the clients. I think in a service business, it starts to be like, well, whatever they want, I should become. And I think it's really easy as this is my first real professional pursuit. And in a service business, when you don't have your own identity, it starts to really take hold of you. And it's a noble thing to say that you're in service to people and to clients and to all of that. But it was a very alarming question when people started asking me what I wanted out of the business. Like, I don't know anymore. So it sounds like you dealt with something similar to that.
Totally. Where I've come to, and I can backtrack a little bit, I've come to believing really strongly that the interests of the employee or the leader and the interests of the business have this great synchronization. And if it falls out with one or the other, it's like if I'm not the right fit because of what's doing to me personally, then I'm not the right fit for the business. Like they're connected. Like when I'm not showing up as the right leader, then I'm not the right leader.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make adjustments there and you can do delegation and you can, kind of reset things. But it gets to a point where you fall out of fit.
Mm-hmm.
And you fall out of fit, in my experience, you first have that happen to you. And then you see it in the business where you see that your energy is not flowing into it and the business is being drained of that vital resource. Because not to make too much of it, but if a leader is not pushing their energy into the business, that business is starved nutrients that it needs to grow and thrive. And boy, it has a ripple effect. And it takes a long time to sometimes see it. It's like a train slowing down, but when it starts to happen, you're like, oh, we got to make a change here. So what's right for me and what's right for the business are the same thing. And it took me a long time to see that and be courageous enough to say, hey, this isn't right. I'm not feeling it. And let's fix it or let's make a change. In the case of Boardable, it's time to make a change. And thank God we did, for the business and for me and for Jeff, who took over as CEO, it was the right thing all around.
Knowing this a little bit more about you in the second opportunity at Boardable, were you more intentional about grooming him into that role, knowing that the end of the road was going to come for you, not knowing totally when? How did that transition look? What will you do differently even the next time?
That's an interesting question. So when the transition was announced, I talked to one of our leaders and she said, yeah, I thought that was going to happen right after you brought him into the business. I was like, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. But, a startup like that, I mean, every month is like a hero's journey, and we'd had a lot of hero's journeys.
How many years did you run it?
5 years.
Okay.
In 21 and 22, I was full-time like 4.5 years, but 5 years. And it got to the point where I was talking to the board in the middle of 2021. I said, hey, I can do this another 12 to 18 months. And the board was like, well, how can we make it a better situation for you? And I was like, well, I need to let go of more of the business. And so we started shifting more to Jeff. And by the end of that year, he was really running a lot of strategy sessions. And then the beginning of 2022, he was in the president role. And that was a good transition for both of us because this was not like a throw the guy out, put the other guy in situation. It was, okay, let's test this. Let's feel this out, both sides. And the fit just got better and better for me and for him. And I think for the business was ready for somebody that was frankly more structured and, in my opinion, more disciplined than I am. I'm more artistic in nature. I tend to work more on inspiration and ideas. And he's more of an engineer by nature. He's got a lot of those things too, so I'm not trying to say it's just one or the other. That gear shift that happens when a product business gets to a couple thousand customers and you've got all kinds of scale and complexity in the business, not my sweet spot.
So if there's an entrepreneur listening to this and they're saying, how do I know the difference between a bad week and it's time for me to step aside? How do you start to see the signs? And if you were to give somebody else that looking glass?
I think there's a few things. I'm not a journaler. I think journaling can help because then you start to go back and see some trend line. I think meditation helps because in a lot of ways, it's like sort of journaling in a place of quiet. You're listening to your mind unspool and taking an observer stance. So that helps because you can hear your mind. You go, okay, my mind keeps on going through these loops. Working with a coach. Super important. I had a fantastic coach. I actually just connected with him again this morning. And he was instrumental in helping me through that process and journey, just really transformational experience. Having peers, people in my life that I could talk to, my wife, who at that point had been through a CEO journey. Those were super important to me. One of the things I talk to my leaders about, I say, I don't want to have the same conversation about the same person 3 times. The third time we have it, there's a change that's going to happen. And the same thing, I need the same thing. It's like we're having that same conversation. It's time for you to make a change. So those are some of the things that helped with me. And then having a supportive board where I could go and talk with them one-on-one about how I was doing was helpful too.
Was everybody supportive?
They were.
Yeah.
They were. And that is not a common situation for a venture funded business. They to the person was like, we are here to support you and what you're building and what your team is building. We
Mhm.
want you to be happy. And that was, you know, emotionally for me, really powerful because I was scared to bring that to them to say, hey, I'm falling out of fit. I'm not having the fun. I'm not feeling energized. I don't think I'm the right leader necessarily for this next phase of the business. And I'd seen friends of mine who had gone past that point, and I'd seen the damage it did to them.
I know.
And I was, you know, I turned 50 in 2021. It was part of that. I was like, at 50 years old, I was like, I don't have the rest of my life to just burn myself out to make money. You know, it's like, and it's not actually going to make me more money. You know, if you think about
Mhm.
it in terms of my equity and things like that, having a better leader will actually make more money for me.
Mhm.
This heroic mindset is BS, and I got to let it go.
Well, I think there's also a weird juxtaposition because as you were talking about your conversations with the board, it was about how you felt,
Yeah.
your energy. And I think there can be this big monster of like, if I'm going to go to the board or I'm going to go to owners or I'm going to go to investors and talk about the need to leave, that it has to be an empirical, quantitative
Oh
discussion.
boy. Yeah.
But it's wildly emotional, actually. It's only emotional.
Tiffany, this
Um,
is like the biggest aha I've taken from my sabbatical. It hit me in the face when I was away from things for a while. It's how important feelings are and how much they matter to a business. They really do.
mhm.
I posted something on LinkedIn. A friend of mine who I admire, she posted a comment on it. She said, "Feelings are information, and every business wants to understand and process and leverage the information they have." And the way I think about it is, if you don't honor the feelings that you're having and your team is having, then you're not honoring the energy of the business because feelings and energy are directly tied together. If you try to suppress those feelings or ignore them, it's extremely draining. You don't have that energy to put into the business. So you got to talk about how you're feeling. Because if you're not feeling something, that has a direct effect on how you're showing up and the performance you have as a leader and as a business. So feelings matter. But we think about business more as trying to control and mitigate and de-risk and everything else. I'm like, no, there's this big, huge part of it. You get a team of people that feel strongly about something and they want to have it done. Feelings is how we bring things into this world. Like if you really want something, it generally happens one way or another, in my experience. You get a bunch of people that really want something to happen, they really feel it. That's powerful.
So you mentioned sabbatical. That's actually the kind of word and reason I originally wanted you to come on. Because again, from a distance, I've observed that this idea of creating space for something other than everyday life to take place is something you've been practicing in lots of different ways. And I've never done that before. And I have lots of thoughts and feelings about it that I was like, I want to talk to somebody who's done this as a practice,
Yeah.
hear your experience, and then also just like ask all my stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Please, let's
let's
talk.
dig into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you say sabbatical, what does that even mean? Let's like level set on that.
Yeah, I've done a week in the woods every summer since 2015, where I go alone by myself to a cabin in northern Michigan, and I spend that week with no internet, no connectivity, no people. I bring a guitar, typewriter, you know, some recording equipment, stuff like this,
Mhm.
books, and I'm in nature. I buy a bunch of groceries, and I cook over fire, and I live like that for a week, and it is one of the most nourishing things I do all year. Like it's sacred to me, and my wife understands that, and everybody that works with me understands this. Like, this is a sacred piece of time. That's not really a sabbatical to me. It's sort of a mini, maybe, but it's
Mhm.
more of a just from earning income. And not that there weren't times where I was involved with things at Boardable or SmallBox or other businesses I have equity or involvement in, because, you know, life goes on. But I didn't have a calendar running my day.
Mhm.
And that's the big difference is I'm back into that world now. And now it's kind of fun to wake up in the morning and see what's on my calendar. But as a CEO, I think you know this, there's a point where 10 to 12 appointments on your calendar is just, it's defeating to even look at sometimes.
Mhm.
And I was definitely in that place before I took a sabbatical. And I just needed to recharge. I'd been pushing myself hard for a long, long time. You know, I'd never had any downtime between things. Usually they were overlapped, like with Boardable and SmallBox, where I was doing both things at the same time.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize how drained I was until it took about 2 to 3 months where I finally felt my sort of like, you know, energy settle down. And then when I did my week in the woods this past summer, I had been at that lower pace for a few months, and it was profound. Like I went into that and I experienced such a state of flow. I was writing, I was making music, I was reading, I was doing spoken word essays. I was just like on fire with all of this stuff that had been kind of like germinating. And I compare that to the week in the woods I did the year before, which was exactly after the week we had our team week. We had the entire company in town during a COVID lull. And we had this wonderful week. And then I immediately, the next day, went and spent a week alone. And I crashed. I was super drained, more socializing than I'd done in like 2 years. And so, I learned a lot this past year. It was like, hey, you don't just jump off the cliff, you kind of get ready for it. And when you get ready for it, you show up really refreshed and charged up to do something. And to me, that week in the woods is a very creative time. It's where I fully embrace my artistic nature,
Do you think sabbaticals are more for introverts than extroverts?
Interesting.
Are you an introvert?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So I used to test as a strong introvert on Myers-Briggs. My wife, she's got a background. She's trained in that and DISC and everything else. She's got all these great tools. So I'm always the guinea pig, which I love to be. And so I tested very strongly on the introvert scale, and now I'm right in the middle. So,
Interesting.
you change over time. I think that, and the funny thing is she came out of the pandemic much more introverted. I came out much more extroverted.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't entirely understand it. So the answer is I'm right in between. Introvert or extrovert for a sabbatical. I have a friend of mine who is a crazy extrovert. And we had this funny idea for a reality TV show called Extrovert on an Island, where you'd like take these extroverts and put them on islands by themselves.
And watch them just eat themselves alive for something to do. Yeah.
How long till they go crazy?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my stereotypes is like, I don't know, I'm an extrovert. I'm pretty sure I would just walk around in a circle and call somebody to join me. I don't know. That's a stereotype I have in my head is like sabbaticals are for introverts. I'm an extrovert. Therefore, sabbaticals are not for me.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's always a little challenging the first couple days to acclimate to the aloneness.
Even though you've done it a few times?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you, Tiffany, even though I've done it 8, 9 times, I still go into it with a little fear and trembling. It's still a little bit frightening to be alone by myself for 6, 7 days. As much as I'm looking forward to it, I also know that I've gotten to some places during those weeks that have been dark at times, where I've confronted my fears and gotten into, my childhood. And, there's emotional places I've gone to that have been uncomfortable for me. It's not necessarily a safe space, just to be clear, because you are confronting stuff within you, but boy, it's a great experience if you get through it. That's just the week in the woods stuff. The sabbatical is different because you're not like on an island for that.
Right.
Not everybody may be built for going up and being alone for a week by themselves. That's a little different. I would say that everyone should at least try a good weekend just to meet themselves, like kind of get to know yourself again. And I don't know, like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating. I also think that my achiever self would be frustrated if I spent 3 days alone and I'm supposed to have a huge revelation. Like, where is it? Like, I think I would put pressure on myself to get there.
Yeah,
yes, get there. And it's a failure if I don't. Again, I'm just kind of practicing the things that I think would start to spin in my head.
Yeah. So what I found, having done this a number of times, is that there are ahas that come to you sometimes. I had one year around my family, around my extended family. And I was like, I need to get these people together. I've not seen them in a long time. A very powerful experience. And I ended up organizing them for a reunion. It was just a beautiful experience. So that was an aha. That's pretty rare. Most of the time, it's what comes after I come back. It's how I come back into the world. And what I see then is where the ahas come, not while you're there.
Interesting.
And that's an important thing to think about. You're like, no, you're not actually supposed to get them right now. It's like, it's when you see with new eyes, when you come back into your business or into your relationships, your life, whatever, and you're like, oh, you become more observant. Oh, I have a habit around this. Or, I've never noticed that about that person before. I think I'm going to talk to them about this. Or, wow, they're really good at this. I hadn't noticed this. Or these 2 dots equal this thing, I'm okay. I can't believe this service and this service equal this service. We could go to market this way, whatever it is, It's more that. So going into it thinking you're going to come out with a big revelation or aha, you may, but most likely you'll get to something on the other side.
So do you encourage or create the like space for the leaders of the companies that you're really involved with to do something like this?
Yeah, at SmallBox, they have at 5 years, you get a 1 month sabbatical. So there's been a number of people take advantage of that and could travel. One person went to England and worked with one of their favorite music producers.
That's cool.
We always encourage people to do any sort of what we thought is self-care, around their own lives. And that's super important. But with Boardable, it was such a fast-paced environment. I mean, that's like getting on a wild horse and just trying to stay on, for a while. And it's so chaotic in that environment. The business maybe now can get to some of that stuff, but when I was there,
Yeah, there's seasons where it's not in the cards.
it's tough. It's tough. And even maternity leaves are tough. We had a leader do 2 maternity leaves. I know it was stressful for her, and I didn't want it to be, but she was so in the business, and she was so committed, and you've been through that. It's challenging.
Yeah, there's seasons where it's just not practical. But you said the first couple months, it took you a while to kind of find your bottom and refine your energy.
Yeah.
And then you went on your week in the woods. Did you plan on it being 6 months, or you just sort of felt like this was the end?
I worked it out with the board, to basically have the rest of the year to not have to worry about income, which I appreciated. And so did the week in the woods in the end of August, and then did a trip with my wife for our 20th anniversary to England and Paris for the last 2 weeks of September. Then after that, I actually started thinking about, okay, I need to make some money next year. So I started just having conversations, taking walks, coffees, lunches with people that I really admire and enjoy. And then Opendate kind of landed in my lap. I would say it was probably right about before Thanksgiving. And I was a little nervous because, it wasn't clear. I thought I'd get into coaching. I've always felt like that was a strength of mine when I worked with employees, is to coach them. But I also didn't see a clear path there. So, I just kept trusting life, universe, God, whatever you want to think of it is. I kept putting my intention out there and just saying, here's what I'd like to have happen. I'd like to be in a place where I'm getting up every day energized and excited. I'd like to be compensated like this. I had numbers in my head. I'd like to work with these kinds of people. And I realized that the thing that mattered to me most was the who and the how. Who I was working with and how I was working. The way we were communicating, the way we valued each other. The what I saw as being secondary. And then when Opendate happened, I was like, oh, this is the what as well. It's music and technology, 2 areas of my life that I really love and with people I really admire and care about, a great team. And so it was like, well, the universe really delivered this one up nicely. Who knows how long the road is with anything, but what I'm doing right now, I really enjoy, and I'm glad to be doing it.
And how is this funded? Is it venture funded, what you're doing now?
No, it's not.
Because I was curious, because I feel like you got to live firmly in both of those camps where we've been a self-funded, for-profit. If you make it, you get to invest it. If you don't, then sorry for your luck. If you lose money, you actually lose it, kind of thing. And then there's the universe of the venture backed and the expectations around that. The board is not totally there just to help you.
No.
It's to manage their investment and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So what did you learn from those 2 environments? Maybe let's start there, because I think one can idealize the other.
Totally.
And
Totally.
there's not a lot of people who have spent significant stretches of their career in both.
You understand, you've been through the pain, hopefully not currently, but of just meeting payroll, of just the struggle, that Sisyphusian struggle of just every month and every quarter getting back up that hill with service businesses. And that was no small part of my SmallBox journey, in part because every single extra dollar I had, I'd throw into some project.
Yeah.
I just was so frisky, I just wanted to,
Frisky.
I don't know what else to call
awesome.
it. I was just like, hey, let's go do the nice
That's
grants in the
amazing.
community. Let's go build out this employee engagement solution. It's just like, at one point, I think half the team was just doing fun little projects. How sustainable is that? Not very. But I'd learned a ton. So service business in that environment, you're cash flowing all your ideation and your exploration and play. What I've learned since then, if you don't do that, you can have a very profitable business.
Totally. It doesn't always have to feel that way.
I did not enjoy the stress of payroll. I did not enjoy the stress of billable hours and the control that comes with that, of feeling like I'm trying to control my employees and trying to control budgets, and you're always trying to de-risk things and maximize outcomes. I found that fatiguing. I don't know if I'm meant to run a large service business that has a lot of that complexity. It's like playing, Tetris with project management. But then going to Boardable from that, it's like, I don't have to worry about payroll for like 2 years. Like, we have enough money in the bank to do what we're doing. And it was all about growth. So it was such a relief to go from an environment where payroll was always on my shoulder to now the only thing that was on my shoulder was growth, which is much more to my DNA because I'm a builder. I want to build things. I want to go fast, as fast as possible. With an agency, you're actually somewhat disincentivized to innovate at times because innovation creates inefficiency. And so that inefficiency then creates drag on your profit. And that's not the case in a tech business. You're incentivized to innovate because you're constantly focused on building a better machine to deliver the service. You cannot, to some degree, commoditize the human beings in a service business. Just does not work.
Yeah, I named a president last summer and had the same realization. I joke I know how to build a company, or I know how to grow a company. I don't know how to run one.
Yeah.
It's a little extreme, but mostly true.
Yeah. That's a good distinction.
But yeah, it's like I know how to grow one. I know how to create revenue. I know how to do those kinds of things. But like you say, learning your strengths in that is a really critical piece to it. And knowing when to step them in so that the culture can stay intact and
Totally.
all those kinds of things.
Protecting culture with those hires, particularly those senior hires, is really, really challenging and important.
I have a couple of more things on the sabbatical thing. I think one of my concerns in my own environment as a 2-career home, and we have 4 kids, is that if I took a sabbatical, I think my time would just be so eaten up with the tactical aspect of my family.
Yeah.
That the space, and maybe this is back to like my own achiever expectations of what needs to happen in a sabbatical. Maybe it is just about disconnecting and getting into the like routine of things. I think it would just like be a vacuum for my time.
I think it's important for you to think about sabbatical as something you're defining, not as being defined for you.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. So to me, it's a gear shift. It's like you're going into a different gear because you need to recharge in some way. And what that means is specific to you and your family and everything else. It's like I'm walking away for a while or taking a break from this thing I've been doing. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to spend time over here with something else that matters to me. It's not like you just shut down and stare at a wall. I mean, I just put out an album of music a week or two ago of music I recorded, up in a cabin, so like, it's not like I stopped being productive when I go do these things. It's not like I stopped being productive when I was on my sabbatical. My energy shifted from one thing to another. I spent more time with my kids, which was great because I've got a kid that just graduated from college, a kid that's going to college, another kid that's about to go to college. So I got 3 girls that are all leaving the nest. And it's like, oh, geez, I want to be with these people. I love them. And just be around the house and be available. And it was beautiful. Be with my friends, go on weekends, and also just wake up in the morning and not have to worry about my calendar. Just the psychological lift of that was really good for me.
And like not knowing what time it is.
Oh yeah. Not even really sure what day it is sometimes. You're just like weekends and weekdays sort of blur together. And you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go do this. I feel like taking a walk. I need to take a nap. That's what I experienced.
That was actually very profound. You said it. You can define it how you want to. That's very helpful. So the other thing is that I would say in the last 18 to 24 months, as I've really committed to myself to this scared, confident journey, stared down my own fear, and began the process of committing to content creation. It's like auditory journaling, right? And I've just feel like I've just seen my life differently, having to talk about it and export and explore. And I'm a verbal processor, so that helps me. I see this too. You've kind of casually mentioned you've seen some of your friends get past the point where they weren't uniquely qualified to run that organization. It starts to eat them alive. And I'm at the age, I'm 42, where some of my friends have like jobs that are insane. The amount of money they make is crazy. The exits that have happened. You start to see these like things that Your 25-year-old self says when that happens, all will be good with life. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
But you start to see these people are a vapor of what they once were because of the pressures. And as I am in an environment where I own the company and can control a lot of things, I've started to say, I think the ultimate goal, certainly success, but it's to live a life that is sustainable, to not be in these extremes all the time where you do have to say, I'm so trashed out that you have to push pause every 5 years. I'm open to being challenged in this, but I feel like I look at people in my stereotype is like high growth venture backed companies where it's like, yeah, you went to your exit and then you needed to push pause because of what it required from you was not balanced. You weren't with your family. You weren't investing in your marriage. You weren't able to invest in the community, your friends the way that you wanted to. And now you have to do a total reset. And then is the next option engage in the game again and then total reset. So what's your reaction to that? And maybe just people get to pick what they want to do.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to not get trapped into the cultural mindset of what success is and the comparative mindset. And one of my favorite quotes in our house is comparison's the thief of joy. And that's just something we tell ourselves and tell our kids all the time because it sure as hell is. And the more that you get stuck into that comparative mindset, I've had friends, very close friends, who've had really, really powerful, great exits. Has it changed their lives? A little bit. Are we still friends and same stuff? It's like, yeah, are they 10x happier? No. I've talked to them about that. I talked to my coach about this today when we talked. What is abundance? Abundance to me is it's having enough and then having love in my life and having friendships in my life and family in my life. That is abundance. Money is a piece of that, but it is not nearly as important as I thought it was even 2 years ago when it was very much a part of my psyche of just equating wealth with some kind of happiness. You can be very happy without it. And I'm sure you've traveled and been to places in the world where you've seen people that have materially very little, but incredible joy and happiness in their lives, much more than many wealthy Americans, sitting in large houses, isolated from everyone around them. I don't want to live that kind of life. So to me, abundance has more to do with the love in my life and the joy I experience and the friendships I have than it does to do with material things. And I get a lot of joy out of building companies. And you know what? Some of those companies are going to sell at some point, and I'll probably make a whole lot of money, and that'll be fun. That's great. But when it happens, I hope that it comes into my life in a way that does not deform me and that I'm not already a vapor, as you said, from the journey I took to get there.
I think one of the things I've learned about values too is figuring out what you won't trade in, whatever the thing is, to get more abundance. And I think that comes with age too. You're starting to get really clear on that. Like, these are things I'm not going to trade in for along the journey of amassing something else.
I think there's a difference between wealth and abundance. You can be very wealthy and have no abundance.
That's true.
Abundance is more of an energy, a mindset, a way of seeing the world. Wealth is something that you look at as in the bank, a little bit more. I mean, true wealth is abundance, if you would think of it that way.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of how the world thinks about it, wealth is dollars and stocks, ownership and stuff like that.
Can I transition to your personal life quick?
Sure.
So I have 4 girls. You have 3 girls.
Yeah,
and you're a life stage ahead of me. My oldest is in 8th grade. So what's it feel like parenting? I've got 14 to 2-year-old.
Cool.
So you're, high school to college, through college. What's it like? What's it feel like?
Yeah.
What are the things that you're thinking about as a parent in this stage?
First off, I love having girls. I wouldn't know what to do with boys. I'm sure I'd figure it out, but I love having 3 girls. They're loving, they're emotional, they can talk about their feelings, they're caring and kind. It's so much fun to see them go out into the world and have success, have challenges, make their mark, find the things they love, have relationships, boyfriends, buy cars, travel, get a broken bone skiing over Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, all the
all
things.
those
Yeah.
things. And just to see them and just to just feel this sense of just, you know how it is to have kids. It's just like this, wow, this profound sense of connectedness and distance. I feel like there's so much a part of me, but at the same time, I feel like they're this separate whole universe of person. And then as with Jenny and I journeying on that together to see ourselves reflected in those amazing humans, the greatest joy I get, like a little bit of pride too, is to see my kids interact with my adult friends and just to see how they show up in their lives and how they just show up as a human being and not as a child, you know, looking them in the eye, talking to them, joking with them, building their own relationships with our friends, you know. We have a lot of aunts and uncles beyond our normal aunts and uncles. That's a great source of pride for me.
Has the process of letting go been pretty natural for you and Jenny? In
Um,
the way you speak about it, it seems like, hey, we've always known this is going to happen. You kind of know
yeah,
this when you have kids. They're going to leave.
yeah,
They get their own lives and not
yeah.
not separate from your own.
There's moments where it's challenging. I think that the teen years have been great. The preteens were where we had some turbulence. Not a ton, but just where you could tell like they were really looking to define themselves outside of, you know, Jenny and I have strong personalities, you know, and together as a household, as a family, we have like a strong identity. And there's a desire to like to be separate from that.
Uh-huh.
Totally get that. I went through it too. For the most part, I think they've all found a way to be their own identities and still appreciate the shared identity that we have. I feel blessed in how good of an experience we've had, and knock on wood, but you know, it's been a really good experience. And there's definitely been bumps. There's been hospital visits and there's been tears and there's been, you know, trauma and being a parent, any minute your phone could ring and your world could be upside down, you know? And I think learning to live a peaceful, joyful life while that's a reality is it's a practice, you know?
A lot of who I speak to is Two Career Homes, which I know you and Jenny have.
Yeah.
The girls' entire lives, is that right? Jenny's been outside the home. She's done a lot of really cool things in her career
yeah,
too.
she did her master's when they were young, and then she was working during that time. At times, she was the main breadwinner when I was starting SmallBox and you know some other things. You know, so yeah, more recently she's pulled back and gone to more of like a little bit of a lighter schedule, doing her own consulting work.
But that's a big deal. What would you say were the things that allowed you guys to do that well? And I mean, still stay married. I say there's a lot of it's hard.
Staying married is not always a given.
No. And you have a bunch, you got a bunch of kids, you've got big stressful jobs. You're both growing in different ways, sometimes towards, sometimes away. Life brings stuff you didn't plan on.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, growing together as a couple is so critical. And you're not always going to grow together. And part of growing together is growing apart. Like, you know, like kind of like you got to go off and kind of find new things to bring back to the marriage. You know, you got to be like, hey, come check out this thing I'm really into, you know, and then you bring it back to the marriage and you find joy in discovering it together. So there's like this interesting cycle of sort of going away and coming together, this sort of ebb and flow. I think me being self-employed was helpful. And then I just got to give a shout out to my in-laws. I don't know how people—
That's part of your system.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how people raise kids without family like 2 miles away, because that's all I've known. And without her parents in our lives, I don't know where we'd be right now. I think the stress levels have been so much higher. The experience of the kids would have been much different. The overall network of love and support in our life would have been much different. I think we'd still be married, but it would have been a more challenging run.
Well, I think you've got to find somebody to share the load with you.
Yeah.
Amazing if it's family. Or I tell people all the time that are like trying the 2 career home thing, I'm like, you have to believe people when they say they want to help you.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You will not make it without help. Whether it's paid or it's neighbors or it's people from church or it's people from your CrossFit gym or it's your in-laws, you have to have a web of people.
Yeah.
Because kids are going to get sick. Things are going to happen. Kids are going to have to be in 2 different places at the exact same time, and one spouse is going to be out of town. You have to have a web of support.
You have to. We could not have done a 2, career household without our in-laws. I just don't think we could.
Is Jenny an only, or does she? You guys?
She's an only.
She's an only.
Well, she has a half sister who lives out of town.
That's kind of the mother load there.
Yeah, I know.
Getting in-laws where you're the only.
And her mother has just got the heart of a servant.
That's incredible.
So she, her love language is, acts
it was her
service.
delight to be with the girls.
Still is, yeah. And the girls love, the grandparents. And my mother, who's in South Bend, helped out as well, especially, like grandma camps and things like that. But no, day to day, that was huge. Now that the kids can drive and stuff, I mean, good Lord, that is, wait till that happens, Tiffany. That is like, did you have one that can babysit now?
Yes.
That's, I mean, that's a game changer right there. So,
Yeah, it totally is.
More freedom's coming your way.
That's right. Well, Jeb, thanks for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love talking to you. This was great.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Scared Confident. Until next time, keep telling fear. You will not decide what happens in my life. I will. If you want to get the inside scoop, sign up for my newsletter. We decided to make content for you instead of social media algorithms. The link is waiting for you in show notes, or you can head over to tiffanysauter.com. Thanks for listening in.